First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for embarrassing my dad on Facebook over his post about being a single dad? I've, male 16, lived with my grandparents my whole life. My mom took off when I was a baby and haven't seen her since. So my dad left me with his parents and they basically raised me. My dad was kind of around, but not really. He'd sometimes come to take me to his house for the night every month, drop me off and be gone again. As a kid, I used to always ask him how come I can't live with him, and his reason was always because he works a lot. When I got older, I sorta saw the truth, which is, he likes to live single lifestyle. He's had like 1 million girlfriends, and that's how I ended up with 4 other half-siblings. But you know, they still live with their mom, so we only get to hang out when it's my dad's custody time, because he just leaves them at my grandparents and doesn't hang out with any of us. We're all used to it by now, but what's annoying is, to his girlfriends and friends, he acts like he is a hero for being a single dad. He talks about how hard it is, then brings me up specifically because my mom walked out, so it's like he cares for me full-time. I usually don't say anything, but it bothers me. He made a Facebook post the other day. It was an older pic of him with me and my brothers the one time he took us to a soccer game, 4 years ago. He was talking about sacrifices, but it's worth being a single dad. This made me mad. And I commented, you haven't even come to the house in like a month. Which is true. Haven't seen him since a few days after Thanksgiving. He deleted his post and got mad at me for embarrassing him. My dad said I was being disrespectful, and I don't know what it's like to be a single dad providing for us, so I don't get to act that way. He was really mad about it, and after I thought about it for some time, I guess it was petty to embarrass him by calling out his BS. So I wanted to know if it was a-holish for doing it. Now for the top judgment and more info. Not an a-hole. Truth hurts, I guess. A once-a-month parent isn't as comparable to single parents who have their kids full-time. He is only sacrificing 1 night a month to be with you. Though a question does pop into mind. Does he provide financial support to your grandparents for expenses? Same goes with your half-siblings. I hope he is being financially supportive. Also, does he celebrate holidays and birthdays with any of the kids? But other than that, 1 night a month is quite isolating, so you are right in calling him out. Also, his post embarrasses itself since he used an old photo. Guess he doesn't have anything more recent? Nah, he doesn't. My grandpa has his own business, so they never needed money from him. He spends money when he takes me out to eat, or buys birthday gifts. I don't know about my half-brothers. Holidays? Not really, but usually he does come by on birthdays. Yeah, so it is not a sacrifice since he is not working to help with expenses. It is when convenient for him. A father of convenience, I guess. As for holidays, I guess he is with his girlfriend at the time. Thanks for answering my inquiries. Either way, he should be called out and he should be embarrassed. Not a a-hole. Being a father and being a dad are different things. He may have been your father, boy, but he ain't your daddy. Not a a-hole. It sounds like both of your parents abandoned you. Just one of them sees you occasionally when it's convenient for him. It sounds like he's using OP to impress women. Fatherly instinct is attractive and he knows it, but he didn't actually have it. He's a deadbeat baby daddy that's painting himself as a single father to get laid. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my mother-in-law meet our baby before she died? Me, 29 female, and my husband, 32 male, had our daughter a few months ago. Due to some complications, I had to have an emergency C-section and she had to be incubated for a few weeks as she was born prematurely. We weren't able to be by her side at all hours of the day and it was agony for us, and it has made me overly protective of her. Eventually, she was strong enough to come home, and for the first 2 weeks of her being home, I was still recovering from her birth, and she was still so tiny and frail that we didn't go anywhere. We did have family members, in our bubble, come around to help out with housework, bring us meals occasionally, the usual, but they always came to us. We didn't go out and take the baby to visit people. My mother-in-law was a phenomenal woman who'd been battling bowel cancer for 3 years. Over the past year, her body had gotten progressively weaker, and she was essentially bedridden, but was still very sharp mentally and was excited to welcome her first grandchild into the world. She was receiving care at home as they basically told us that there was nothing more they could do, aside from making her comfortable during the time she had left. We knew it was coming eventually. We just didn't know when. Understandably, my husband was eager to take our daughter over to his parents' house so they could meet her properly, but the thought of taking her out on a trip that wasn't absolutely essential, that is healthcare related, made me anxious. I didn't go over to visit while I was recovering, but he visited mother-in-law regularly alone. I was just apprehensive about him taking the baby and hated the thought of being apart from her again after what we'd been through, even though it'd only be for a few hours. I told him that I wanted our little girl to meet her grandparents so much, just not yet. Hang on a little bit longer. Sadly, mother-in-law ended up passing away before we could take our daughter around to meet her. We are all heartbroken, and the grief has hit my husband hard. He's starting to resent that I kept our daughter away from his mom, and is becoming quite hostile towards me. I feel guilty and selfish. There was no malicious intent behind it. I genuinely didn't think mother-in-law would be taken from us so soon, and my mind was too focused on protecting our tiny baby. The more I think about it, the more I feel like I was overreacting, and now there's no way I can fix this. My husband has been sleeping in the spare room, and I feel like I've sabotaged the happiness we should be feeling as new parents. My family and friends are on my side, and say I couldn't have predicted the future. I was just doing what I thought was best, and my husband is only acting this way because of grief. But I feel terrible, and I know I've made the process of losing his mom even harder than it would have been. My father-in-law is upset about it too, although he doesn't seem to blame me as much as my husband does. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Mother-in-law passed 3 weeks after our daughter came home. Edit 2. My anxiety at the time was not pandemic related. It's a factor, yes, but wasn't my reason. It was more to do with separation anxiety. I know it's not a good reason either, and I should have just gone with them. I was just reluctant to leave the house once we were all home, after not allowing myself to recover properly after the C-section due to constant visits to NICU. Now for the top comments. Soft, you're the a-hole. You were understandably overprotective and perhaps are suffering from some post-traumatic stress disorder from the whole birth. You need to seek help. Your husband was visiting her, which means if there was something contagious, he was already bringing it home. And if you were so concerned, why didn't you consult a baby's doctor to see if it was okay for her grandmother to see her for a few hours? I can see how it would seem malicious, even though it wasn't. Believe me, I have major anxiety issues and do similar things where I'll blew off people because of an anxiety attack, and they don't realize I'm not mentally able to deal with them that day. Also, realize that he is grieving and probably not thinking clear, just like I don't think you are with your overprotectiveness of your child. This is better than what I would have said, so I am upvoting you instead. The only thing I would have added to my own comment was that it is the husband's child too. I was trying to put myself in the husband's shoes, and if my husband prevented me from showing our newborn to my dying father, I would have an extremely difficult time forgiving him. I would definitely be attending therapy or couples counseling. You're the a-hole. But the thought of taking her out on a trip that wasn't absolutely essential. The woman was dying and knew it. But that's not essential? Would you say the same if it was your mother? This. Everyone sympathizing with Opie is out of their freaking minds. You're the a-hole. You said you had no way of knowing she was going to pass away, and yet admit the care home said she was in her final days. Sounds like her death wasn't a surprise at all. You knew it was coming. You were told so. Your husband is not going to buy that excuse. I understand why he's upset. No matter what happens when he thinks of his mother, he will think of how his wife just didn't want to take her baby over there. And I say her baby because that's what she acted like. It wasn't an equal decision between these parents. She decided that she didn't want the baby to go over there. She didn't take her husband's feelings into consideration at all. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my parents they were bad parents to me? I, 19 male, have an autistic brother, 20 male. He's fairly manipulative because he realized pretty quickly that the threat of a meltdown would get him his way every single time. He is considered high-functioning by medical personnel, but he's got my parents convinced he just doesn't understand what he's doing, and they don't ever punish him. Doctors have told them that he understands, and that he knows what he's doing. They think they know better. They also expect me to revolve my entire life around him. I was never able to do anything I wanted because it upset his routine. I wanted to play a sport. Nope, his routine. I wanted to get a job. Nope, his routine. Friends? Yeah, forget about that. I tried not to be resentful, but I am. The problem: my parents are flipping out because I plan to move several states away and in with my grandparents soon to attend school. They keep trying to guilt me into staying because of my brother. I usually just say that I'm sorry that they feel that way, but I'm still going. Well, here's where I might be the a-hole. My mother was going on and on about how the world doesn't revolve around me, and how I was being really selfish, and how I was going to ruin my brother by doing this. How they'd always been the best parents they could be to both of us, and how we both got equal attention. I got frustrated and told her that she was delusional if she thought she or my father were ever good parents to me. They made my life revolve around my brothers. I had nothing of my own. He had to be the center of everything. I said he wasn't the center of the universe, even though she tried to make him it. I told her that the only people who were selfish were her and my father because they actively ignored me in favor of babying my brother, who played them like a fiddle to make sure he always got his way. I told her that his routine was not my problem, and that it was up to them to make the appropriate adjustments, and asked if she really thought I'd just not live my life because of him. She started crying, and I walked off and shut myself in my room. My father is demanding an apology for what I said, but I'm refusing. My grandpa said he's proud that I stood up for myself, but my parents are still demanding an apology for being an a-hole. I don't think I need to give them one. Am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. High five, virtual applause, and standing ovation. I was literally fist-pumping reading what you told your mom. Good for you. There's nothing to apologize for. You told her the truth. Absolutely nothing to apologize for. You're a teenager. You deserve to do teenager things like play sports or get a job, and especially hang out with friends. You deserve your own life and to try new things. Congrats for standing up to them, and best of luck for uni. Not the a-hole. Your parents abused you. They had this coming. I hope you find a better life and better family out there. Not the a-hole. Any chance you can move now? Agreed. His grandparents are ready and waiting. He should do what he can to move sooner rather than later. He can use the time to settle into his own new life. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for letting my niece call me her mother in front of her friends? I've been raising my niece, Hannah, since she was less than 1 year old. She's now 14. Her biological mother was my older sister and she was an addict. She tried to get clean but relapsed a few months after Hannah's birth and disappeared completely after that. She died a few years later. No one in the family could take Hannah in, and I didn't want her to end up in the foster system, so my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I took her in. We're the only mothers Hannah's ever known. When speaking directly to us, Hannah refers to us as her aunts, but I've recently noticed that she has begun to call us her mothers when talking to her friends. It's very recent. That doesn't bother us in the least since we consider her our child. Plus, we have another daughter who is 7 and who obviously calls me and my wife Mom, so we can see why Hannah has started to do the same. I'll be honest, I almost cried the first time I heard her say that, and I've never explicitly discouraged it. My parents and other sister came over for Christmas. There are no virus cases in our area. We invited Hannah's best friend and her parents as well since their relatives live in another country and they had no one to spend Christmas with. My family heard Hannah refer to me as her mother and lost it. My mother told me I was disrespecting my sister's memory, and my other sister called me disgusting for trying to replace her. All of this happened in private, and Hannah heard none of that, but it still broke me. Am I the a-hole for allowing Hannah to call us her mothers? Not the a-hole. You and your wife have raised and looked after Hannah since she was a baby. You are her mothers. Seriously? I don't understand why the family is mad. People get mad about the stupidest stuff anymore. It's just insane. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. You've raised the girl since she was a baby. You are her mother. Her biological mom is her mother too, as is your wife. People can have more than one. I call my wife's mother Mom. Does that disrespect my mom? No. This is so true. Calling in-laws by names your spouse uses is common practice across many cultures, yet no one gets up in arms about that. Meanwhile, here is OP, fully raising a child since birth, and someone wants to question whether or not she should be given a mom title. Please, biology is the easy part. The work to being a mother is a whole other effort. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Hannah sees you as a mother figure. You have been mothering her for 14 years. She knows who her biological mother is, and I'm sure that you and your wife have kept her memory alive. It's no different than a child who calls a step-parent by mom or dad. It's no different than a child who calls their friend's parents mom and dad. I think what happened is, this was a very visceral reaction from your mother because it cemented in her mind that Hannah's biological mother is really gone. It's another piece of acceptance in the mourning process. It may have been some years ago, but somewhere in your mom's mind, as long as Hannah saw you as her aunt, your older sister wasn't gone. Hannah should be a part of the process with your mother, and explaining to her grandma that it's not disrespectful to her biological mother, but rather respect for you and your wife who took her in when no one else would or could. Hannah should tell grandma that she loves her biological mother for giving her life, but she's choosing to show her love to the only moms she has ever known. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you with the next one. Stay safe. First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my brother stay at my house after he betrayed me 7 years ago? My wife, 38 female, and I, 35 male, been married for 1 year. 7 years ago, during a holiday ski trip, my entire family and I stayed in a chalet at a resort. One day, my then-girlfriend wasn't feeling well, so she stayed behind. I came back in the afternoon to retrieve something and found her and my brother, then 18 years old, having intercourse. I'll spare the details of what happened next. My ex-girlfriend and my brother both apologized and swore it was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I tried to make it work with my ex, but a few months later we broke up. My brother apologized, and I chose to be an understanding older sibling, so I forgave him. He was really matured a lot since then. My brother's place is undergoing some renovations, and it will take 3 weeks. He asked if he could stay with my wife and I in the meantime, as we have an extra bedroom. I agreed initially. Then yesterday, I had a flashback to that day I found him with my girlfriend. I called him and told him I couldn't let him stay because I can't trust him alone with my wife. He was upset and said I could have told him sooner. Now he has to find somewhere else to stay and the renovators are coming in a few days. He also called me paranoid and said he has no interest in my wife. He said she's not even my type and she's too old for me. I told him sorry, I just can't let him stay. I suggested he move in with our other brother instead. He said whatever and hung up the phone. Am I the a-hole? I feel like I was justified, but maybe I shouldn't have been so sudden. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. If your wife not being his type is why he won't sleep with her, that means he would sleep with her if she was his type. And even if we assume he's telling the truth that she's not his type, she very well could be his type after a couple drinks. Now, of course, if you trust your wife, then you can trust nothing will happen. But that's not really enough. It's a matter of respect that your brother shouldn't even try. He said he's not like that anymore, and swore he would never do what he did regardless, and called me paranoid and untrusting. Some wounds don't fade with time, and his response by calling you paranoid and untrusting, instead of seeing that he caused this untrust, is manipulative. Not the a-hole. It sounds to me like he is not really remorseful when he made that comment about your wife. If he really was sorry, he should have said, I wouldn't sleep with your wife because I don't want to betray you again. I wouldn't trust him again. Also, info. How did your family react to the situation? I only told our other brother about the situation. No one else in our family knows. It happened near the end of the trip. I told the other family members I broke up with my girlfriend because she cheated on me, but didn't say with who. Everyone sucks here. I totally see where you're coming from, as I also have past trauma/distrust from my ex. But I can also see some holes in your tale. You said he matured a lot since then, and you forgave him. You haven't mentioned how your wife, you know, the other person in the house, feels. You're also not taking into consideration the trust you have in your wife. It's clear your ex was also at fault for the chalet. Your wife is a different person, and I assume you trust her. Now, for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not pushing my daughters to cuddle with my wife? My wife and I have 3 daughters. 13, 7, and 3 years old. My wife is 6 months pregnant with our 4th. I have always been really affectionate with our daughters, pretty much from their birth. I never force or pressure them. I would just ask if they wanted to cuddle when we're watching a movie or something. My wife is affectionate, but not as much as I am. My 3-year-old usually just sits on her own with her toys, but my 7-year-old pretty much has a permanent reservation in my lap. When my 13-year-old turned 11, she asked if she could sit on her own from now on. I said of course, and she did so. But then maybe 2 to 3 months ago, she asked if we could snuggle up again. She said the only reason she stopped was because her friend said it was weird, but now she doesn't care anymore. My wife was happy when my 13-year-old asked to cuddle again, but I noticed she would get a little sad when she saw 7 and 13-year-old with me. I've asked them both if they would like to cuddle with their mother for a while, and 7-year-old would usually go to her mother and then come back to me after a while, but 13-year-old would rather stay with me. My wife broached this with me and said she wanted me to tell them to cuddle with her more. I told her I did suggest that to them, but I'm not going to push or pressure them. I know it might be difficult for her, but I suggested to my wife that she ask herself and just be more all-round affectionate with them, especially when I'm not around. But she doesn't accept this and says I'm being selfish and unfair and that I should be sharing our daughters more. She also suggested that I deny them when they want to cuddle so they go to her instead. She says she would do the same for me. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Someone suggested I edit my post to mention this, but I don't believe my wife's suggestion of denying my daughter's cuddles was genuine. I think it was just her grief talking. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your wife has to learn that this is a bodily autonomy issue. If they don't want to snuggle her, they won't. And trying to force the issue isn't going to help. Thanks for your comment. Yeah, I agree, but I still don't want her to be upset, you know? Especially since she's pregnant. Pregnancy does not override consent or any other fundamental value. Not the a-hole. No one should be pressured into giving anyone affection, not even their parents. I understand that your wife is hurt, but pushing your daughters or denying them your affection is not the solution. Agreed. Any suggestions how to approach this with my wife? I think that she needs to be reassured that this isn't that the kids don't love her, but that everyone has a different love language and hers with the kids so far hasn't been cuddling. She needs to understand that your kids have their own bodily autonomy and want different affection from different people. It's a hard conversation to have, and I do understand why she is sad about it. But that doesn't mean she can force it on the kids. I agree with the love language thing. My wife has always spent time with our daughters doing activities, mostly things like baking together. I think it's just that my 13-year-old wanting to cuddle again has made my wife want in on that as well. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not rehiring the nanny we fired over a misunderstanding? I, 38 female, have a 17-year-old daughter from a previous relationship and a 6-year-old daughter from my current marriage. My husband and I both work, so we employ a nanny. This nanny also takes care of my 11-year-old nephew who comes over a lot when my brother is at work. A couple days ago, my meeting for the afternoon was rescheduled, so I decided to go home at 4:30 instead of my usual 6:30. The nanny was supposed to bring my daughter home for a snack before dropping her off at dance. I walk in, and I'm surprised to find that the nanny isn't back yet. I go to the kitchen and find a can of Smirnoff Ice Mash poking out of the trash can. All the alcohol in my house is in a wine cellar, and my husband and I don't buy Smirnoff. I was furious because nobody in the house had any business drinking. My nanny, when she was hired, was told that drinking on the job was strictly banned. I went into my daughter's room where she was lounging on her bed and held up the can. I asked if this was hers. My daughter swore up and down that this wasn't hers. She looked me in the eyes and said that she heard a can being cracked open by the nanny and that she saw the nanny drinking something in a can as she passed by the kitchen. I called the nanny and she said she was on her way home and there was traffic. She comes in and I ask her about the can. She said this wasn't hers but kept not meeting my eyes. The nanny admitted to drinking from a can but said she disposed of it elsewhere and it wasn't alcohol. I decided to believe my daughter and told the nanny that we were going to have to let her go. After the whole debacle, I called my brother to tell him that somebody else would be caring for his son when he came over next. A few hours later, my brother calls to say that his son claims that my older daughter told him she'd get alcohol from friends, and she disposed of it before we got home. My younger daughter comes up to me after dinner and says she's seen the same colored cans as the one I found under her older sister's bed. I confronted my older daughter, and she finally admitted she lied. She apologized to her sister and said she learned her lesson. My brother said his son really wants the same nanny as before, and my younger daughter asked if this means the nanny can come back. My older daughter said it would be humiliating to have to admit fault to the nanny, and said I can't be so cruel as to make her see this nanny again every day. She asked if this means she has to grovel in front of the nanny. I told her that while we are disappointed, we do not want to put her through this, and hopefully we can find just as good a nanny. I told both my brother and my younger daughter that it would be best we do not reach out to the nanny in any way, and that it would be rather humiliating to make my daughter apologize given the situation and potential for awkwardness. My younger daughter cried and said she loved the nanny more than her sister. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. Not for not rehiring her, but for not apologizing and making your daughter apologize. So it's cool if she just goes through life not taking responsibility for her actions because it's humiliating? Just what the world needs more of right now. Economically privileged kids grow up learning that their actions have no consequences and that their feelings are more important than other people's livelihoods. Exactly this. OP needs to see this. The nanny has lost her job and her income over a lie. The only person facing consequences of the daughter's lie is the nanny. OP is a terrible mother if she's worrying about her daughter's feelings instead of making the situation right. All her daughter is learning is that it's okay to lie, regardless of who she hurts in the process. With lessons like that, she's going to be a horrible adult. You're the a-hole, and both you and your daughter needs to apologize. I doubt your nanny wants to work for you anymore, but saying it's too humiliating for your daughter to apologize is... yikes. You're the a-hole. You're punishing 4 people to save the one who caused this entire mess. You're also teaching your eldest daughter that actions don't have consequences. She took the coward's way out and blamed her actions on someone else and got caught in a lie. She literally cost an innocent person their job. A fitting punishment would be for her to have to see that person every day, so should think about doing this sort of thing next time, especially since your brother, nephew, and youngest daughter like her. You're not always going to be there to protect her or keep her from facing consequences. At the very least, you should have her apologize to the nanny, and you should too. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for taking a much-needed vacation in the middle of my wife's grief? At around 6 p.m. Tuesday night, my mother-in-law died. Doctors had discovered that she had an inoperable brain tumor around 5 months ago, and we pretty much knew that there was no hope. My mother-in-law had been in hospice and it was a good facility, but my wife still went into total zombie mode. So it's been 5 months of non-stop work and no affection or appreciation of any of my efforts. My wife does nothing but eat pre-packed microwave meals, so I have to cook dinner for our 15-year-old daughter. She never makes an effort, to the point of wearing sweats even to work, and worst of all, she went from showering every day to maybe twice a week. My daughter made my wife a cake for her 45th birthday 3.5 months ago. I knew that my 45th birthday, which was yesterday, would be given no attention because doctors had said, again, that this was the end. And my wife has done nothing but cry when she hears that. I called some of my family and friends, who all live in Arizona, and they said I deserved to have a good birthday. So I agreed to go back home for the week to celebrate and catch up. My wife got furious when she heard I was going, and she started begging and crying that she would control her outward expressions of depression and grief if I stayed, and said that she felt it was true this time, even though we have had like 4 false alarms regarding her mother before. In addition, her mother and I have never been close, and I know I don't land anywhere close to the top people she wants to see before she passes. My wife said she'll work to be less distant, and she does not care if we lose the money if I had already booked the plane ticket. I told my wife that I didn't need her to pretend to act less distant, and I know she's grieving in a way I've never grieved before, but that I was no help to her right now and was so fatigued that I needed a break. So I ended up flying down to Arizona, and on Tuesday night I got the call that my mother-in-law had passed from my daughter. She said she's staying at her best friend's house and she's perfectly fine. However, my wife texts me and says I betrayed our wedding vows. I asked if I should come back when we were expecting a lot of old family friends for my birthday, and my return flight is on Sunday. My wife says to do whatever I want, and that if I'm expecting my old workouts every day and dresses up everyday wife back when I come home, I will be disappointed. Am I the a-hole for taking this trip because I needed to do something for myself, or else I'd go crazy? I will be flying back Sunday, but I know my wife will be barring me from helping with the funeral. Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. All you do is complain. It's exhausting to cook dinner for a child who is perfectly capable of cooking dinner for herself. You are upset that your wife isn't wearing makeup and nice clothes. This is exhausting for you? Too bad, it's not about you. I am fairly certain you have ended your marriage with your actions. I hope Opie's wife can pull herself out of her grief enough to start divorce proceedings. Yikes. To start divorce proceedings. Plot twist, the dying mom's final wishes to her daughter were lawyer up and crush your husband. Way to make this entire situation completely about yourself. You wanted a good time, so decided to abandon your wife during possibly the worst time of her life, then didn't even go back after her mother had died because you wanted a birthday party? Yes, you're the a-hole. He abandoned his wife and his daughter in their time of grief. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.